So, you see a lot of these people trying to sell you your self-growth things, and they're going off of how people perceive you. It's always based on how you're perceived. And I'm not even going to waste any time. If you buy into that, you are going in the opposite direction. If your overall goal is self-growth and you're worried about what others perceive about you, and that's how you base your results on self-growth, you're not measuring success right whatsoever. Um, and that's what I'm here to talk about today on the Uncancelled podcast is perception versus reality and self-growth. Because if you're trying to pursue self-growth, perception versus reality is an important thing to know as well. So we're going to be going over both of those topics. And to begin, we're going to stay on the self-growth a little bit more and then segue into the perception versus reality. So self-growth, what does that look like? I mean, that can look like different things for different people. Depends on the starting point. It depends on the goal, the perceived end point, where you see yourself at the end of this journey of self-growth. Because for some, it could be reading more books and gaining more vocabulary knowledge. For others, it could be dropping a few pounds. And then for even other people, it could be gaining some weight because you're too skinny and it's hard to gain weight. So what you got to understand is for different people, self-growth looks completely different. What one person's self-growth might be to another person would be walking in the opposite direction. You see, for me as a guy with a fast metabolism who has trouble gaining weight, for instance, if I told somebody who's overweight and looking to cut my diet as advice, it would be completely nonsense unless they ate smaller portions, right? When I'm bulking, you don't want to take my advice when I'm bulking if you're trying to lose weight. So, it's important to know that self-growth for everybody is different. Um, if you're starting out at running, you're doing like a jog every day and you're doing it for 20 minutes a day and you're like, man, I want to grow. I want to get better. Well, maybe try upping it the next day to 25 minutes. Do an extra 5 minutes. Just get that extra heart rate, the lung capacity. Just get that little bit of an extra edge each day. And then keep going forward, keep going up. The goal should be to go above and beyond what you were before. Not to compete with anybody. We're not competing with anybody. Cuz we're all, like I said, you can't compete in a world where self-growth for each person looks completely different. Cuz it's just not working properly. If we want true individualism in a way that actually works in our society, these are some of the solutions that we should be looking towards, which historically we've never known before. Like philosophically speaking, we've never had philosophers that have come up with the ideas that I have had to help our society grow. So if we want true individualism, we have to understand that self-growth looks different for each person and how each person might take it. So how do you measure it? You look at their starting point, take into account their end point. Don't assume anything in between, because if you assume, you might be talking shit on someone that doesn't deserve it, right? For some people, self-growth can be getting out of that rut that they were in, so whenever they self-grow, whenever they're growing themselves, you're like, after they're fully grown from their self-growth journey, you might look at them and be like, they're like 20 points below me in worth. But it has nothing to do with that in comparing other people to other people, because like I said, that person still grew from where they were before and they reach their end goal, it might not look like what your end goal is compared to, but they reach their end goal. So that's why I try to take, people, even people beginning music or something, for instance, I try to take it as easy as possible on them without, giving up myself. You can't give up yourself to be overly delicate. You have to defend yourself so that you can help people. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. But don't completely sacrifice yourself for other people, because that's when you get into the people pleasing, which is it's just perception. That's all perception. That's not reality. That's not the real growth. That's all perceived growth. And when we're looking for self-growth, we're not looking for perceived growth. We don't want to impress the other people in what they think is growth, because this is about self-growth, not about perceived societal growth, but about self-growth. So that's a nice segue into, well, now let's stay on self-growth for a little bit. Let's break it down a little bit further. Give some more examples. Let's say you're a music artist. Self-growth isn't about, oh, my song has 100 plays and his song has 1,000. This isn't, again, the same thing. You're comparing yourself to others. And what you should be comparing is your starting point compared to your end goal. And then you can even do the numbers and figure out a percentage of how far you are on that self-growth journey. Let's say you're starting at 100 views and your goal is to get to 1 million. Well, right there, you're already, like 0.1% to your goal. I don't feel like doing the math right now. Don't quote me on that. But you can do the math on it and you can figure out the numbers, is all I'm saying. You can actually measure that growth, the self-growth. So if I have more self-growth than the next person and you give me more resources, I will outperform that person once I have the same amount of resources that they have. So let's say, like I said, we're at the 100 views. The goal is 1 million. And I'm marketing for a week and I'm already at 3,000. Right? I'm already at 3,000. And all I had for my budget was, a phone in my hand and just pressing my link and sending it out. So I get that 3,000. So at that point you realize, okay, he's achieved 2,900 views for free. If we were to give him more resources, these people who have achieved 1 million views under a $250,000 budget, well, this guy's going to outperform them on a $5,000 budget. So just cut him out, cut those $250,000 budgets right out of the fucking food chain. We don't need to pay their salary anymore. We got this motherfucker. There's no need. Right? And so it's applying that kind of understanding to the world. And some people don't want to think that deep into it. They're like, I want the power without the responsibility. And I'm like, bitch, where's it at? So let's get in now to perception versus reality. So perception, I mean, that's like you take out the trash every day, nobody sees it, but then you take a walk and you trip and fall on the sidewalk in front of 30 people and they all laugh. And so now you're the talk of the town, but what are you? The guy who tripped. In their story, you're just the guy who tripped and fell. But let's go into the reality a little bit. That was just what they saw. That was just what they perceived. That's perception. The reality is that you're actually a guy who's on the ball. You're taking out the trash. You're leading by example. And you made a mistake. Right? I mean, you made a mistake and you tripped and fell. But let's give props where props is due. You got back up and you kept moving. So that's pretty damn cool. And it deserves a lot of props. It deserves a lot of credit. I don't think we should be just, you know, looking at things so one-dimensionally. We're all people. You know what I mean? We all make mistakes. The difference is I'm not going to judge you based on that little trip and fall you made. Me personally, I'm like, he tripped and fell, but everyone makes mistakes. I saw him trip and fall the other day, but everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure he's a good guy. Those are the types of things I'd say. And how do you measure somebody else's reality? Well, that's the thing. Why would you want to measure someone else's reality? Don't you have a life of your own to grow? But let's say you did want to figure out, am I perceiving this guy as the reality? Or am I just perceiving him as perception? And that's the thing. Like, my goal personally isn't to impress anybody. So their perception can be far off from my reality, and I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Their perception could be so far off of my reality, and it doesn't change me. They can say, if you want to be perceived as tough, you got to stop being the nice guy. And I'm like, well, who said I wanted to be perceived like anything? I just want to be me. I don't want to be perceived like anything, but just who I am. And to do that, you would have to have a better understanding than just the one-dimensional how he's perceived. Right? So how do you measure someone's reality? It's a tricky subject. You can't go off of the words, right? And you can't go off of the view count because, the world's kind of weird and likes to hide certain narratives because they know that those narratives are correct, right? You can't judge off of the, what other people say because, like I said, people lie. So that leaves us just with one other option. The results of their actions and nothing more. You can't go off of the joke they made at Thanksgiving like 2 years ago. You can't go off of the post that was made on Facebook. You can't go off of what their neighbors said or the people they're friends with. The only thing you can go or judge someone off of, because honestly, if let's say they are friends with somebody I don't like, that doesn't affect their value in any way. That's just, it might, depending on what their friends do, it might actually affect their value. But for the most part, what you judge by is just the results of their actions. So let's say, again, they're just taking the trash out every day. Well, what you might want to start doing is looking to see who takes the trash out, right? If you're their neighbor, you might want to, set out on your porch at night if you really care, because I'm not saying you have to focus on other people's business, but if you really care, if you really want to judge people and figure out a perception versus reality, you might want to start looking at who's taking out that trash. Not what he said or she said. Not the joke that was made on Facebook or Thanksgiving. But strictly results. And that's just perception versus reality. So, to go back into growth a little bit, one man buys a BMW and he has to pay, X amount of money each month to pay it off. On top of that, he has, a transmission to get fixed, and every time he gets something fixed, something goes wrong with it. You've met that guy before. Now, he does get to drive around the BMW, so there it is, but undoubtedly that is financially not growth, right? It's perceived as growth. People look at the BMW logo on their steering wheel in the Snapchat, they go, whoa, right? But I don't go, whoa, because I understand that the reality is the real growth is the guy who bought the either the truck because he's going to be hauling stuff around to make money, or the car that's just a basic sedan, a reliable to and from work type of vehicle, to and from the grocery store type of vehicle, to and from the office type of vehicle, that, like I said, is overall just reliable. The only thing you have to get done on is the oil change and the tire rotations, and you're good, right? Pump up your tires and you're good until the damn thing fails. That's real growth, you know. You're actually going to be making money down that route. The guy in the BMW is barely breaking even. If not, he is going in a bigger hole than he could ever imagine. And this isn't to hate or anybody, you know. This isn't to be disrespectful. But I think you need to, like, have an idea of real growth in mind, because you're too busy just caring what other people think. And I'm like, hey, keep doing it, buddy. But I would love to say that, but none of you guys are my enemies, and all of your actions affect me. So, I mean, you know, the less prosperous your state is, the less prosperous you are, right? So if everybody in my state gets out of high school and buys their BMW, I'm not doing very well, because none of the people that serve the country are doing well except for me. It's the same as, like, you can do great, but if everyone around you is doing shit, then it's shit. Like, it's shit. It doesn't matter how good you do it. In fact, there'll be people telling you, just don't even try anymore, Ben, because you can't win. Too many people are fucking shit up. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. That happens. I mean, I've actually lived through that. I've lived through that at jobs before. And so, yeah. Self-growth, perception versus reality. This one was really short. I wish there was more to add, but you know what I mean? Perception, I feel like this is an easy one. I feel like people already know this, but, you know, all in all, perception is just how, you know, how you see somebody. Perception is what you've seen. The reality is just what they've actually been through, the things that they've actually accomplished. Some people only show their good side to certain people. You know what I mean? Like, let's be serious here. Some people are really nice to their families, but as far as the world goes, they just want to shut them out. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. But of course, the world views them as bad people, because that's the only side of the guy that they see. But it's like, what's the reality here? Well, the reality is he's a dad who has, you know, a son, a daughter, a dog, a wife. He's taking care of all of them. So yeah, he's mean to the world, but that's because he's protecting the people inside the home. Like, let's not stray away from the truth here. Because I know some people like to do that, but let's not stray away from the truth here, because despite whatever political agenda you want to push, we're all still human, and we need to see each other as we really come, as we really sit. Because if we're going to divide each other on the basis of pure assumption, right? Or just stuff that you completely don't know, false allegations, misunderstandings, you know, in other words, if we're going to divide each other over how we perceive each other and not even how we really sit, what's the point of being United States of America? Why wouldn't they call it like Divided States of America? Or, something like that. United Suckers of Authority. Because a lot of you unite, but just to suck authority, as I say. A lot of you unite, but none of you are united under a common goal. You're united under a fucking hive mind belief system, which is completely different. You know, one goal, united under one goal, means that you're all working towards one goal, but you might have different ways of doing it. So let's say we're all trying to make a movie. I have this guy working on G effects, like video effects. I have this guy filming it. I have these guys acting. Like, they're not a hive mind that's not a hive mind collaboration, because everyone has a different skill set, different mindset, different background. But if I go in and I say, all right, we all need to believe this same exact thing or get the hell out of here, that is a hive mind. That is no longer being individuals that are working towards one common goal. But it's a hive mind. And I argue to not be the hive mind and to be the collaboration that is individualistic. Everybody has their individual position and work goal, like work. They have their own sets of skills and work to do to reach that goal. You would need to understand the perception versus reality as it pertains to self-growth. Because if not, then you get into the hive mind. And you have to keep your brain barriers up at all times. I talk about this a lot. What's a brain barrier? A brain barrier is about knowing yourself, knowing your inner dialogue, knowing your autobiography, knowing who you are, like really strongly knowing who you are. And then when somebody tries to convince you that you're otherwise, you have the mental capacity to say, that isn't who I am. And like, no, like you're not, this isn't your story. And you can't let your guard down on that, because the minute you do, it is usually too late. You have to be vigilant with your mind and your ideas and your self-growth. Because if you're not, you let your guard down for too long, people will take advantage of you. They usually don't want you to grow. I've met a few people who actually want you to grow, who actually have good advice to spill, who actually have a lot of wisdom to teach. But a lot of people just want to prey on your traumas, right? And they want you to end up looking like the clown. Don't look like the clown. Understand the difference between perception and reality and how it pertains to self-growth. Don't catch yourself trying to impress these people out here. Don't catch yourself buying the Beamer once you graduate high school. Like, if you want to do that, feel free. But also, if your goal is to actually build a real future, make some good income, get yourself in a nice, comfortable living position, you're not going to want to get the Beamer outside of high school. Like, if you picture yourself in the Lambo, you don't settle for the Beamer after high school. You get out of high school, you buy that fucking office. You rent the office out instead of the apartment. You sleep on the couch every night and build a business, and you become a millionaire. You don't go buy a Beamer and pretend to be a millionaire while you're sitting with $300 in your bank account trying to wonder where your fucking next meal's coming from. Um, so perception versus reality. I've really beat this to a pulp now. Everyone have a good one, and hope you learned something.